Hey everyone, it's Decatur Wilson here with the Freed Mind. We have Dr. Beth Wilson here from Thrive Family Services. She's a clinical director with that agency. We're here to talk about anxiety. We hope you find it useful. So, the reason why we're here today, I asked you what are the most common disorders and diagnoses that you're having in the agency, and it happens to be anxiety. And that's been the case for a while because we've been at it for 5 years now. Right. And it seems like that's been a continued thing. What else you mentioned to me was that there's been a slight uptick, to more diagnosis for anxiety. What do you have any reason for that? Do you have any gauge on why that might be the case that there's uptick?
For the uptick, I would definitely say, well, COVID, of course, is one thing, but also just more people getting help. So where before we saw, with mental health still has a stigma associated with it, so people aren't always getting help. But since COVID, and I don't know if it's people had more flexibility in schedules because they're home more or they're around each other a lot more within the family, so they're recognizing the symptoms of it and things like that, so they're more likely to get help. But also just different changes that are happening economically, where one, spouse, one may lose a job and the other one still has it. And so you have some economic stress and, things like that happened. So we definitely saw an increase in people coming to seeking the service where anxiety was a reason for that.
So what about the kids, though? It sounds like that's more of an adult situation when they're worried about job or finances or whatever. Are kids coming to the agency too?
Sure. Yeah. We always have seen kids with anxiety, and that's a common thing. Sometimes it can be an adjustment disorder with symptoms of anxiety, and sometimes it is a generalized anxiety disorder or some type of social anxiety or something like that. But with kids, definitely, I feel within our agency since school started and back into sports and having to interact with others and getting back into those schedules and things like that have taken place, you see more anxiety happening because things have shifted and changed within their own, themselves. So being home, not in school for so long and things like that happening, not being around friends a lot. And now you have to talk to people. You can't just text them all the time. There's those types of things that have led to more anxiety and performance, of course. So we definitely see kids that come in with that academic performance. They're trying to meet a mark and they want to, satisfy and make people proud and do well, where when you were being taught at home, it's a little easier to do that because maybe you manipulate things in some ways, especially the older kids who might use some notes or things like that on tests, and now you're back in the classroom. So there's definitely, more anxiety just around the social interactions and the expectations for children.
How common is it for I don't know if I've ever dealt with anxiety. I'm sure I get nervous. I guess that would be considered, some being anxious, I guess.
Sure, situational.
Or situational anxiety. But how common is it for adults to have anxiety? What's that look like?
For adults, the last I looked for 2022 through the CDC, it's like around 27% of adults will be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. For children, it's close to 7%. So it is a lot lower with children. But like I said, for children, when there's a new adjustment, so parents are being separated, they move to a different state and go to a different school, things like that, or going back to school after a pandemic. There's situations and adjustments that take place. And if those adjustments are within the last 6 months, they're diagnosed with an adjustment disorder. I don't think the CDC captures that as anxiety. So even though that can lead to anxiety in some, if parents are proactive, teachers may be proactive in telling parents that I think your child might need to talk to someone or they may be struggling, then they start getting help early on within those adjustments, and it may not lead to that anxiety disorder. They may be able to get the help and be able to work through it.
So how does a parent or a teacher identify that they may need help, or their kid may be dealing with some anxiety?
Sure. Great question. So there's two parts to anxiety. You have the internalizing symptoms, and then you have the externalizing symptoms. And of course, externalizing means you and I can see it. So we can see it in our kids, teachers can see it in their students, doctors can see it in their patients, I can see it in my clients, all that stuff. So what's interesting about anxiety, and I always have to clarify this with parents a lot, is anxiety and ADHD mimic each other. The symptoms mimic. So with anxiety, kids might be fidgety. They may have trouble focusing. They may have thoughts on their mind that just cause difficulty to stay on task. They may get out of their seat. They might interrupt, things like that, which is a lot of the same similar symptoms of ADHD. So when it comes to teachers or parents recognizing those types of symptoms, sometimes it's important to seek professional help because you'll recognize, oh, it's anxiety, it's not ADHD. You don't want your child to be medicated for ADHD when they have anxiety. So that can be not detrimental, not lethal or anything, but the medication will not have the effect that you want it to have. So you want to make sure, to seek professional help that they get the right diagnosis. So those are the externalizing disorders, the things that we see on the outside. Then you have internalizing things that it requires your child or the student to tell you about it. Mm-hmm. So, some somatic stuff, my stomach hurts, my head hurts, my heart's beating fast, things like that, those feelings, those physiological things that they have. And then you also just have them worrying. I'm thinking about this a lot. So they have to tell you what's on their mind, right? I'm worrying about this. This is on my mind a lot. Or I don't want to answer that question. I'm afraid I'm going to get it wrong. But if it's a worry outside of the normal worry, they're worrying about that all the time. It's not just before a test or things like that. Then you could be looking at some anxiety.
How would a teacher identify? You said teachers, would possibly mislead or be misled that it could be ADHD. Mm-hmm. How would they be able to identify that, and what would they do in the classroom if that is the case?
Mm-hmm. So, of course, a teacher can't diagnose. So for them, if they're observing things, for them, I think it would be being just very transparent with parents, letting them know, your child's a great student. They're smart. They're capable. These are the struggles I'm seeing. These are the areas for growth that I see. They're struggling to sit still, or they keep asking me questions and not trying to answer it on their own, or they're afraid of getting things wrong, or they keep talking about their stomach hurting, but I saw they ate a really good lunch. So things like that they might recognize as some symptoms of anxiety, or maybe situations that have taken place too that can lead to anxiety. So it's important for parents to communicate with teachers, right? Hey, just so you know, maybe a father coming to the teacher letting her know, last night mom left town and she hasn't come back, and the kid may be feeling some anxious symptoms. They might be worried about their mom. I don't know what's going on. We don't have answers, things like that. Or illnesses come in the family, things like that. So it's important for parents also to communicate with teachers so that they know what's going on within the household.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So we talked about children, adults. Mm-hmm. So me being an adult, self-awareness is pretty important. So when you need help. I don't know how I would be able to be self-aware of me being anxious, I guess, or, what does that look like for me to be self-aware?
Sure. So sometimes it could be a change in habits or patterns, things like that. So being self-aware of sleep patterns. Are you losing sleep? When you wake up in the middle of the night, are you struggling to fall back to sleep, whereas in the past you could fall asleep easily? It could be, we see a lot of substance use that goes hand in hand with anxiety disorder. So do you feel like you're having to have a drink a little more often than not, or smoking marijuana, things like that? So that's something to be self-aware of. Your irritability. That's another thing. So are you more irritable, and are you struggling just to keep calm? Things are setting you off that didn't used to, or that maybe used to, but not so as quickly. So being just more self-aware of that. And then also, of course, of those physiological things. So your head's hurting more, your stomach's hurting more, your heart seems to be beating faster. You could tell it's beating, which sometimes you can't. You're like, why is my heart beating? It's racing right now. So things like that might be leading to it. And also, what are some changes that have happened in your life? Did you start a new job? Are you going to get your master's degree? Are you having to work 2 jobs to make ends meet because of inflation and the stuff going on in the economy? Did you lose your childcare, and now you're wondering what you're going to be doing with your kids so that you can continue to work? Right. So noticing some situations that may be happening in your own life and being able to recognize that. And then, just the stresses of money, marriage, life, friends. There's a lot of stress, health. There's a lot of things that come into play as an adult, a lot of burdens, a lot that lies on our shoulders, especially if you have the children that we talked about that may have anxiety. That's also on you as a parent. So you have that on top of it. So because you're worried about your kids.
So I'm a pretty irritable person. So I'm probably got a lot of anxiety.
Maybe.
That might be my thing. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I just learned something here myself, and I'm married to you and didn't know that. Wow. So, as far as if, I guess, when do when do you go see a counselor in this regard? Like, so is there any coping skills that somebody can do before they have to or before they should go seek help?
Sure. There's always, so me, and I'm not trying to get business or anything like that, but if you're questioning if you or your child or someone you know might need help, I would say go get it. So if it's a question like, gosh, am I struggling with this? I would just say go get help, but just be proactive and do that, because once it's been so long, it's harder, to get through things. But there's definitely coping skills you can use on your own. YouTube's a great place to go for the stuff, mindfulness, meditation, things like that can slow down your mind, journaling, getting stuff out of your mind. And I say this for adults, and sometimes I have to put it in practice myself, of you wake up in the middle of the night because of whatever reason it is, write stuff down that's on your mind to get it out of it. So that way you could just go back to sleep, hopefully, and not forget what you need to do or whatever's going on. So that's important. Talking to friends, which you have to remember, all friends aren't professionals. So, but talking to friends, they know you. So talking to them about what's going on and seeking their advice can be beneficial. Self-care is huge. So if you're stressed, stuff going on at work, things going on, going to the gym, exercise is good, going to get mani-pedis, stuff like that people can do for self-care, and it just being mindful that I need a break. So when you recognize you are more irritable or stuff is going on, like, oh, I think I might need a break.
Interesting. So we're here on the Freed Mind, YouTube channel. Like, I think the question I had is kind of leading into, like, how does it lock you up from, making your progress or doing the things that you want to do to be successful within your life or progress? Like, how would anxiety stop you from those things?
I wouldn't say necessarily anxiety would stop you. It could in certain areas. Like, I don't like being in front of a camera. So anxiety could definitely stop me from doing this right here, right now. But I don't allow it to. But it's possible for some people it would be too much. That anxiety would be too strong that they wouldn't do it until they're able to work through, those symptoms and be able to be more calm and more comfortable with it. I would say it would slow down progress. So not necessarily block you or stop you, but it could slow down the progress you can make. So when you're feeling anxious about going to get that job promotion because someone else is applying for it who might be better than you, and so you just end up not applying, where in a year and a half, that person leaves. So now you apply, you could have gotten it possibly a year and a half ago. So you're just, that progress is a little bit slower. Yeah. And so I think being mindful of why you may make decisions you do, why you may hesitate to do certain things, because sometimes it's just uncomfortable, and that's okay to be uncomfortable. You tell me that all the time. So it's not because I'm not capable. It's just you're uncomfortable doing that. So sometimes you just have to work through those, those feelings and emotions to get yourself to a place of being more comfortable. And sometimes it just takes practice and exposure to it so that you can, start doing it more and get better at it and hopefully, help the progress.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I was thinking for test taking and things like that, for getting licensure and all other stuff. I could see that because, we deal with, counselors that go through that licensure. I know a lot of people that, from a real estate standpoint, that go after the real estate license, they struggle with that too.
Right.
Of heading into that, and then the anxiety of them not getting enough rest, or, not being able to get a good solid routine because they're so anxious about the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a big thing with that is finding that person that fills you up with positivity, that optimism. Because there's a lot of times I'm not going to do well. You think catastrophically, right? I'm going to fail. I'm going to have to pay the money and take it again. I'm not going to pass. And then I have to wait 6 months to even take it again. So then I can't work for 6 months. And all this stuff starts ruminating, going through your head over and over and over. And so having someone that pours in positively into your mind to encourage you, to speak of what you are capable of, I think that's really important at times like that. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a professional, right? That could be your mom, your dad, it could be your kid, it could be your husband, a friend, whoever it is. But just to remind you of what you're capable of doing and accomplishing when it comes to exams and test taking. And I know I do that with our kids all the time. If I know they have a quiz or a test, we're going to pray together. You're smart, you're going to do well, just do your best, and I'm proud of you. It's important for them to hear those things.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Dr. Beth, for joining us on The Freed Mind. I'm sure many people got some helpful tips from this. And thank you for joining us on The Freed Mind. Like and subscribe. See you next time.